The Carolina Panthers got robbed today for their best player on defense by the New York Giants. Now, anytime you have a team that's trading away a high-end pass rusher with there being such a high demand for elite pass rushing talent, you normally expect to get first-round compensation. And the Carolina Panthers today, when I saw the news that they were getting ready to trade away Brian Burns, I was thinking, okay, they're going to trade Brian Burns, get a first-round pick, and maybe try to draft one of the top wide receivers in this year's draft. And then it was another report that came out minutes after that one saying that the Giants were showing a lot of interest in getting Brian Burns. So I was thinking the Carolina Panthers were about to get the 6th overall selection for Brian Burns, and they possibly could have the opportunity to take Marvin Harrison Jr., but no, because you know this is the Carolina Panthers we're talking about, so of course they had to find a way to mess this up like how they mess up all their other trades. Can you believe that the New York Giants really were able to rob the Carolina Panthers of Brian Burns? They only got this dude having to give up a 2nd-round pick in this year's draft and a 5th-rounder in the 2025 NFL draft. If you're Brian Dable and Joe Schoen, you have to be absolutely shocked at the fact that you are able to pull off this kind of a robbery, man. The Carolina Panthers don't know what the hell they're doing in that organization, man. Ever since David Tepper bought this team, all this franchise has done is continue to implode and be one of the most poorly ran organizations, not just in the NFL, but in sports. Because this is unbelievable. Last offseason, they had the opportunity to trade away Brian Burns to the Los Angeles Rams and get 2 first-round picks for him. You could have gave Bryce Young some more weapons to work with where he could have had a better rookie season if you just would have pulled the trigger and traded Brian Burns last year instead of holding on to him while his value diminished, and then you end up only getting a bag of chips and some stale flat soda form. Like the Carolina Panthers, bruh, they seem to not know how to trade star players away. They didn't get the proper value for Christian McCaffrey when they gave him away to the 49ers. They didn't trade away the right player when they were trading up for Bryce Young in last year's draft. Like, we all know the biggest mistake the Panthers made with the Bryce Young trade was that they should have never traded away DJ Moore. They should have gave up Brian Burns. And the problem with Carolina and Brian Burns and why they traded him is due to the situation of they didn't want to give Brian Burns what he was asking for, which was somewhere around $28 million a year. The Panthers were not willing to give him no more than what, 25, 26 million. And Brian Burns is a high-end pass rusher. All right, but he's not a superstar tier 1 pass rusher like a Myles Garrett or a TJ Watt. I think he's in the tier 2 with the guys like Michael Parsons, but still very good and deserves to get paid. And he signed the 5-year deal worth $150 million. $87.5 million of that is fully guaranteed with the New York Giants, and that was a really good deal. Now, he does end up becoming one of the highest paid edge rushers at his position. And when you look at his production, it's not bad. It's pretty good. Does it piss you off how much you pay for your monthly phone bill? Why are you getting frustrated when our partner Mint Mobile has plans as low as $15 a month that give you unlimited talk and text on the nation's largest 5G network? Stop getting frustrated with how much you spend on your monthly phone bill and go to trymintmobile.com/JT Sports and description and pin comment down below to get access to premium wireless for only $15 a month. That's only $15 a month. Switching to Mint It's easy. It only takes 15 minutes to do. If you're pissed off with how much you pay for your monthly phone bill, switch to Mint Mobile today and go to trymintmobile.com/JT Sports in description and pin comment down below to get premium wireless for only $15 a month. Stop getting upset with how much you spend on your monthly phone bill and switch to Mint Mobile today. He had 8 sacks last year. He had 12 and a half in 2022, and the last 2 seasons before that, 2021 and 2020, he had at least 9 sacks. But if I'm going to give this kind of money to a guy like Brian Burns, I'm going to need double-digit sack production year in and year out. The Carolina Panthers making the decision to trade away Brian Burns wasn't the mistake. The mistake was what you got for him. You should have not traded this dude away without getting a first-round pick. Even if you couldn't have gotten 2, you should have at least walked away with 1, and that would have been good enough. You can't allow a guy like Brian Burns, who plays a premium position, to just walk away and get this kind of value for him. This is an embarrassment for the Carolina Panthers organization, and it further shows how David Tepper is running this organization into the fucking ground, man. It seems like every time I talk about the Carolina Panthers, I'm talking about either one or 2 things. Why Bryce Young isn't a bust, why he shouldn't be written off, or why David Tepper is the worst owner in the NFL. Like when Dan Snyder ended up selling the Commanders away, David Tepper took the mantle of the worst owner in the National Football League from him. And I think that he likes wearing that title. I think he wears it pretty proudly because he seems to think that he knows what he's doing, but he doesn't. And he doesn't even have a great background in running a successful football organization. Like, he had a little bit in stock of the Steelers franchise, and then he got rid of that and then ended up buying the Panthers. But, you know, this dude just doesn't know what it takes to build a winning culture. He doesn't know how to build a winning football team. It's like, today was a great day at first for Panthers fans because you signed 2 really good offensive guards. But the day ended up on a really low note because you did this stupid trade for Brian Burns. If you were going to get this for Brian Burns, you were better off just keeping him and giving him what he wanted. Because you're better off just keeping a guy this talented instead of just giving him away for basically nothing. You can say you got a 2nd-round pick and you may be able to get a good receiver with that. But at this point, man, you need a first for Brian Burns, man. You cannot settle when you're trading away a premium position like pass rusher, man. You need all the value you can get out of that thing. This was a disaster for the Carolina Panthers. For the New York Giants, though, if you're a Giants fan, you got to be really happy right now. Like, yeah, you feel really hurt about Saquon signing with the Philadelphia Eagles, which is really disgusting to look at. Like, just really disgusting. But making this trade definitely had to make you feel really good about how day 1 of free agency went for you. Because Brian Burns on that D-line with Kayvon Thibodeau, who's now starting to come into his own, and Dexter Lawrence, oh my goodness. That D-line for the New York Giants is going to be so nasty next season. And if they can find the upgrade at QB from Daniel Jones and they continue to improve the offensive line, maybe they can turn things around this year, and maybe I wrote them off too quickly. But this was a fantastic trade by Joe Schoen and the Giants front office. This may have been the best move that the Giants have made in the front office under this new regime, because their last free agency acquisitions that they made last year, Paris Campbell, Darren Waller, they didn't work out. They probably had one of the worst free agency signing periods out of any team in the NFC last year. Like, their free agency class was a disaster. And getting a guy like Brian Burns, who you know is going to give you at least 8 sacks a year, he's going to give you high-end production when it comes to getting after the quarterback. This definitely is a move that you can look at and say this is probably one of the more finest acquisitions that Joe Schoen has been able to get for this organization. But back to the Carolina Panthers, man. Where do you go from here? Because Gross Matos is gone too. He signed in free agency. You also lost Frankie Louisville, who signed with the Washington Commanders. So you're pretty much saying that you're going to start all over on defense. You're going to rebuild that side of the football. You release Von Bell, which I don't think was a bad decision. I definitely think you can get a lot better at that position. But if you get rid of Jeremy Chin, you pretty much have given away all of your cornerstones on that side of the football. The players that you actually have done a really good job at being able to draft and develop, you give away for nothing. The only player that you have left on that defense that you drafted, that you developed, is that defensive tackle that you drafted in the top 10 out of Auburn, Derek Brown. Almost forgot his name. Can't forget his name because he's the only good player that they have left right now on that team in general. So the Carolina Panthers, man, this was a really disappointing move that they made, getting rid of Brian Burns for what they got in return for him. And I just don't understand how they really could just listen to the Giants, offer them a second and a fifth round, and just say, yeah, that's good enough for a high-end position. When you're trading away a pass rusher like Brian Burns, you have the opportunity to set your franchise up to be in a better situation because of the assets that you can get. If you were not going to get a first-round pick, you at least should have gotten a second for 2025 and at least a second and a third for this year also as well. I mean, you talk about finding a way to destroy a franchise that used to be very well ran and a very proud team. Like, the Carolina Panthers were not always this terribly ran. But ever since David Tepper has taken over, from the decision to hire Matt Rule, from signing Teddy Bridgewater, trading from Baker Mayfield, signing the disaster or hiring the disaster as a head coach that you hired last year and Frank Wright, like, it seems as if David Tepper just doesn't get it. And I really wonder who okayed this trade, because if they would have called me or asked any one of us, if this was a decent trade for Brian Burns, we all would have told them absolutely hell no. Don't do it. I'm still tripping over the fact that they had the opportunity to get 2 first-rounders for Brian Burns, and they blew it because they were holding on to him, letting his value decrease when they had no intentions of trying to come to an agreement on a long-term deal. You knew what Brian Burns wanted. You should have just paid him what he wanted. $27 million a year, like, you may view it as an overpay, but it's one of those overpays that you can deal with. Because you still know that there's going to be years that Brian Burns is going to give you 12, maybe 13 sacks. Maybe he gives you 8 sacks, but it still is a good decision to re-sign one of the cornerstones of your team. The Panthers just got tremendously worse on defense after day one of free agency. On the O-line, they made some pretty good signings. But defensively, this team just got massively terrible on that side of the football. And it's going to be fascinating to see how they fix those issues that they now have with some of their bigger star pieces on defense departing in free agency for greener pastures.